Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to look at a case that absolutely baffled investigators for decades, but was ultimately cracked by this wild, perfect storm of civilian persistence and modern science. We're unraveling the tragic yet honestly scientifically captivating story of 16-year-old Kimberly Louiselle.
For over 4 decades, you guys, just imagine that. The family of this young girl waited for answers after she vanished in the spring of 1982. Imagine holding on to hope or even just a desperate need for closure for 41 years. Her family endured decades of dead ends, rotating investigators, and a justice system that, frankly, simply lacked the tools to help them.
But what makes this case truly, truly haunting isn't just that massive 41-year wait. It's the terrifying 20-day gap between when Kimberly disappeared and when she was actually killed. Keep this number in the back of your mind, because it is by far the darkest, most enduring anomaly of this entire investigation.
Let's start with Section 1, the disappearance.
So, to really understand the stakes here, we've got to travel back to March 1982 in a working-class Michigan neighborhood that was being hit hard by a severe economic recession. After a sudden breakup left her stranded, Kimberly resorted to a pretty common practice back then: hitchhiking. She made one final call to her mother from a 10-cent gas station payphone on 8 Mile Road on March 20th. And then, she just vanished. Yet, when her body was finally discovered 25 days later at the Island Lake Recreation Area, the medical examiner determined she had only been dead for 4 to 5 days.
The autopsy revealed a pretty grim reality. She was found completely naked, and every single personal item she had with her was just gone, which is a clear mark of someone deliberately eliminating evidence. But even more disturbing, the autopsy showed old bruises right alongside fresh injuries, meaning she wasn't the victim of some sudden single attack. She had been held captive, assaulted, and tortured over those missing 20 days before finally being murdered.
Moving on to Section 2, 40 years of silence.
Following that horrible discovery, the trail just immediately went cold. A massive search yielded absolutely nothing. And here's the crucial point. In 1982, police were drastically limited by their technology. I mean, there were no public surveillance cameras on 8 Mile Road, no cell phones to ping, and most importantly, there was no DNA profiling. Investigators did collect biological evidence and they safely stored it in a vault, but they just couldn't do anything with it yet.
So, decades pass. By the mid-2000s, Kimberly's younger sister Cindy decides to search her sister's name online. And she was completely devastated to find only 2 mostly inaccurate old newspaper articles. Cindy literally said, it was like she didn't exist. And that crushing realization, that's what prompted her to take matters into her own hands, to make sure her sister's memory wouldn't just vanish into the digital void.
Cindy built a citizen campaign completely from scratch. With zero legal authority and absolutely no budget, she created a dedicated Facebook page. She corrected the record, posted photos, reached out to Kimberly's old high school friends who are now in their 40s and 50s, and painstakingly studied how other Michigan cold cases were being solved. Her persistence meant Kimberly wasn't going to just fade away in a dusty police storage box. And as you'll see, this online presence was the spark that reignited the whole shebang.
Which brings us to Section 3, the parallel breakthroughs.
Fast forward to 2022, this is where it gets like a mystery movie, because 2 independent investigations start running at the exact same time. Breakthrough number 1 happens directly because Cindy kept the case visible online. The Michigan State Police selected Kimberly's file for a hands-on university intern program. These students, looking at these old files with completely fresh eyes, spotted a totally dismissed 1983 note about a man named Charles David Shaw suspiciously destroying his apartment, and they immediately flagged his name. Meanwhile, completely independently, breakthrough number 2 was happening over in Livingston County. Another cold case team was looking into the 1983 murder of a 19-year-old named Christina Castiglione. They secured a grant from an amazing nonprofit called Season of Justice to run advanced DNA testing on evidence from her case that had also been sitting in a vault for decades.
Let's look at how they actually did that in Section 4, the DNA revolution. The leap in forensic science we're talking about here is massive. We aren't just talking about your standard 1990s DNA swabbing. Standard DNA testing, like what the FBI's CODIS system uses, analyzes about 20 points of genetic variation, which is great if you already have a suspect, but it's a total dead end for unknown samples. Enter a private lab in Texas called Othram. They use next-gen sequencing to analyze literally millions of genetic markers to construct complex, deep family trees from unknown, degraded 40-year-old samples.
The process is honestly brilliant. Basically, it goes like this. First, they sequence the full forensic genome. Second, they upload that data to public genealogy databases, the ones where people voluntarily search for their ancestors. Third, they build reverse family trees, literally working backward from distant cousins. And finally, they conduct independent familial DNA confirmation tests. By following these 4 steps, genealogists took a list of hundreds of unknown strangers and narrowed it down to 3 independent tests that all pointed to one single name.
And that brings us to Section 5, the killer confirmed. This is the spectacular aha moment where these 2 parallel tracks crash right into each other. The DNA from the Castiglione case matched Charles David Shaw. When police looked into Shaw, they found a guy with a clearly escalating criminal record. Burglary in the 70s, an attempted abduction at a McDonald's in 1981, and then the brutal murders in 82 and 83. But Shaw ironically evaded earthly justice. In November 1983, he died of accidental sexual asphyxiation, literally dying from the very behavior that drove him to kill others.
So, because that Livingston County team successfully identified Shaw, they finally entered his DNA profile into the National CODIS database. Now, remember those college interns who flagged Shaw's name in Kimberly's file? Well, in June 2023, Kimberly's 1982 DNA evidence was finally resubmitted, and boom, it hit against Shaw's newly entered profile, a 100% match. After 41 long years, investigators could finally tell Kimberly's mother that her daughter was never a runaway. She had been trying to get home to her.
Let's wrap things up with Section 6, 3 lessons for today.
Obviously, the justice system can't put a deceased man on trial, but there are 3 highly practical takeaways from this tragedy that you can use today. First, citizen persistence matters. Keeping a digital memory alive can literally get a cold case pulled off a shelf. Second, prioritize personal safety. Modern tech like location sharing on our phones replaces the highly dangerous 1980s norm of hitchhiking. And third, support nonprofit justice organizations like Season of Justice. They are quite literally bridging the gap and funding the science that solves these mysteries when state resources fall short. Yet, even with this incredible convergence of DNA science and citizen detective work, we are left with one deeply haunting question. Where was Kimberly for those 20 days? Shaw took that answer to his grave. It's a really chilling reminder of the enduring human toll behind all this incredible science, and a mystery that, sadly, may never be solved.